To our commissioners. We'll take some on-topic questions, and we have the deputy mayors here to answer any as well. We will start with Laura right over here.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and Deputy Mayors. Can you tell us what exactly the executive order does that is new? Is it just a public information campaign, or is it creating some new regulations for public workers and private workers? And if the latter, how many people does it affect, and how would it be enforced? What's new here?
So first, I just also want to acknowledge Commissioner Dalton, who's here with us, and we have leaders from across city government. The reason being that this is an executive order that impacts the policies and the enforcement across multiple agencies. So I'm going to go through a few specifics of what the order does. The first is the DOHMH, in coordination with NISM and DCAS, all of whom leadership you see here, will develop worker heat illness prevention guidance and education materials to prevent heat-related illnesses and injuries for workers. A lot of this is motivated by the recognition that there is a glaring blind spot when it comes to what city government's preparation has been for workers, especially those who are working outside in these kinds of months. Secondly, the Department of Buildings is going to review current construction safety and training requirements to determine if those requirements are sufficient to actually protect workers against these kinds of conditions. We've seen, as you've heard earlier, these conditions affect New Yorkers across a wide variety of sectors. They affect those who are working at our airports. They affect those who are building our airports. And we want to make sure that this executive order applies to the full breadth of that spread of New Yorkers. And then also what we're going to have here is actual enforcement for rules and regulations that have been on the books but have not actually been used, not have actually been followed through on. We know that the worth of a law also comes from the willingness to follow through on that law. So a few specific examples that we spoke about earlier. One is DOB will be proactively reminding property owners as well as contractors of their obligation to report heat-related incidents occurring on construction sites. We know that this is a crisis. We also know that there's likely underreporting of the scale of this crisis. We want to make sure we have an accurate understanding of just how widespread this is. And finally, we spoke about this earlier, but we already have regulations to protect outdoor workers and their access to public bathrooms. You can look at Administrative Code Section 20-563. However, there has not been widespread enforcement of that regulation. And so this executive order also directs city agencies like DCWP to fully enforce those laws to ensure that food delivery workers are not only able to, but are also informed of their right to use the bathrooms of restaurants for which they make deliveries.
Just a follow-up. This is not going to guarantee that AGI, for example, will provide John with the right to take a break and have some shade or be able to get water without being penalized, right? Or is it going to do that?
This is going to provide a full comprehensive review of actions both within the public sector and the private sector. And I think
it's not giving him the right to take a water break.
This is starting the process to look at every single rule that's enforced and implemented, as well as ones that need to perhaps be introduced that would protect workers like John.
Any other questions about the executive order? Other questions for the deputy mayor? Sure, go ahead.
About the weather warning that we
Sure, please, for sure.
So there's torrential downpours anticipated. There were changes in housing rules last year with City of Yes regarding cellar dwellings, and I was wondering if those rules are being looked at or reviewed, or if we're going to keep going with those, because they were loosened, even though after some hurricanes there was people who had died.
So I think at the core of this, we want to make sure that each and every New Yorker is safe. And so one of our focuses when it comes to accessory dwelling units is how to bring those units up to code. So we are proud that as part of our comprehensive housing platform, one prong of it is making it easier for homeowners to build those accessory dwelling units and have them be built up to code. Because what you're also referring to is the fact that many New Yorkers live in basement apartments today, and many of them are living in apartments that are not up to code. And that comes to the fore in moments of flash flooding when we realize that there aren't sufficient methods of egress from those kinds of apartments. Now, we do not want to be an administration whose answer to these kinds of crises is just a punitive one. program, where we are looking to find homeowners after the fact. We want to make it easier for homeowners to be in compliance and to help them create more housing supply that still allows people all of the rights that they should have as tenants. So that has been proceeding, where we have actually started to launch a number of these programs. To your point, however, I would advise every New Yorker to stay up to date over the course of this flash flooding. It is difficult to stay on top of exactly when it's going to hit, the amount of rainfall. We have seen those numbers vary drastically in the last, just over the course of the final 30 minutes before a storm is supposed to hit. And the best way to do so is texting Notify NYC to 692-692.
On topic, Sophia?
It's about climate. So.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Bridge.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm going to bridge it. So you talked a lot about climate change, and currently there's a number of challenges to the citizen idling reporting program, including one in Congress to make it illegal for citizens to receive the bounties when they make successful complaints. Your administration recently celebrated collecting nearly $10 million in unpaid fines from Amazon for idling. Do you support the city's longstanding practice of giving people who make these complaints a share of the fine if their complaint is successful?
You said this is a city longstanding practice?
The idling program.
Yeah, I think that, we are looking to make it easier for New Yorkers to breathe in this city. And part of that means that we are taking every measure that we can to prevent not only the flouting of our laws, but also the rampant idling that we see across our city. And longstanding city policy is something that we do support. Thank you.
All right, we'll take some off topics as well, and we're going to start with Andrew right here.
I'm going to start with the deputy mayor, actually, and the mayor can weigh in on this as well. Governor Hochul has formed an exploratory committee for New York City to host the 2042 Olympics, Winter Olympics, and I believe Deputy Mayor Sue is on that exploratory committee. So if she can explain what that might mean, and Mayor, on that issue, do you think it's a good idea? And I have a second question on a totally different topic for you, Mayor.
I think when anyone asks me about the Winter Olympics, the first thing that comes to my mind is feel the rhythm, feel the vibe. Come on, boys, it's bobsled time. I'm now going to pass it over to our deputy mayor.
I can't beat that answer. I think what we are demonstrating is that we can host big events. Every opportunity to show off what New York City can do is something that we love, and so we're starting early for planning.
For the mayor, some members of the Jewish community, including Democratic Congressman Josh Gottheimer, were alarmed by the language you used at the rally last week, calling AIPAC monsters who move dark money. These are phrases that invoke old anti-Semitic tropes and conspiracy theories. What do you say to those who are concerned that the language you used is dangerous?
Now, I want to be very clear. We're talking about a status quo where children are being killed on a daily basis. More than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli military since the so-called ceasefire. Even an Al Jazeera journalist, Ahmed Wishah, was killed this past Saturday by an Israeli strike. And when I am speaking about AIPAC, I'm speaking about an organization that has been supportive of the status quo, that has fought any attempt to actually deliver safety to people not just in Palestine, but frankly, through much of the region. And it is a status quo for immorality. It is one that I will not accept. And when it comes to the way in which they defend the status quo, oftentimes they defend it through direct contributions, as we are seeing right now in New York 13. Oftentimes they also support the status quo through dark money, by filtering money that would have previously been directly from AIPAC, now through other shell organizations whose identities of their contributors are only made clear after an election. And I think that it is important that when we ask ourselves how such death and destruction is happening overseas, we also name those who allow it to take place.
All right, we're going to go.
Monsters. Do you have any regret? Would you clarify or apologize for that?
So, I was quoting Gramsci, who said that the old world is dying and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters. I used the term to describe all those who are preventing the the birth of a new world. Not solely AIPAC, but frankly, super PACs at large who are spending millions of dollars in deceptive and misleading ads that are blanketing airwaves, not just in the case of Daria Lisa Avila Chevalier, but also we see that kind of PAC spending when it comes to oppose Brad Lander, who's running for Congress, as well as Claire Valdez, as well as a number of other races. And I also use the term to describe a politics that for far too long has asked working people to lower their expectations. It has asked working people to be satisfied with small victories as their wages grow even smaller. And my use of the term is a broad use that speaks to the untenable nature of a status quo that is quite literally starving people in this city, all in the name of sustaining something that we simply cannot defend any longer. Thank you.
Henry, go ahead. Henry, right here.
On primary eve, much has been said and written about your involvement, so two questions on that. First, there's been some discussion about you weighing in on some of these races, particularly the intersection of Hispanic leadership and in Hispanic communities. I'm wondering if you, at the end of this process, have any regrets about anything you've done in this primary cycle? And then I have a follow-up, but I'll let you answer that, please, sir.
You know, I'm incredibly excited at supporting two Latina candidates in Daria Lisa Avila Chevalier, who would be the first Afro-Latina to represent that district in Congress. I'm also excited to be supporting Claire Valdez, who's running in New York 7. And I think in both of these candidacies, you actually also see a commitment to working people that will uplift them in a city that is the most expensive in the United States of America. And now I just want to speak a little bit on the question of these primaries. I understand that in our city, there will be a variety of opinions when it comes to which candidate to support and which district to be involved in. One thing I do want to make clear that I find unacceptable in our city is the attempt to use the term Haitian as a slur. The trafficking in anti-Black sentiment and narratives that we have seen specifically in New York 13 when it comes to Daria Lisa Avila Chevalier is something that I cannot stand here and say is in line with the values of the city. Let the arguments that are made for who deserves whose vote be on the basis of the race itself, not on the race of the candidates or on what communities they are alleged to belong to. And I think that it has been quite troubling to see that in the last few days.
Do you think, my follow-up question is turnout is already tracking a bit lower than your historic election last year. There's been some comparisons, fair or unfair, to President Trump and how he maybe necessarily hasn't been able to bring out his base for those he is supporting. What do you think of those comparisons? Are you concerned by any of the voting numbers you're seeing?
Yeah, I'll always tell New Yorkers about the fact that they have an opportunity still to vote in these elections. Tomorrow is Election Day, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Go to vote.nyc and make sure that you cast your ballot. I also will not blame New Yorkers because they're too busy trying to make ends meet in the nation's most expensive city to be able to think about the problems not of today but of tomorrow and the leaders that could resolve them. However, I do know that more and more New Yorkers are starting to think about this race because we're getting to the final point of it. And I'll say that, you know, in our election last time around, I was lucky in that I didn't have to compete with the Knicks' first championship in 53 years. I didn't have to compete with the first World Cup being hosted by our city in a generation. And I didn't have to compete with what will be a summer for many of us to remember, and yet I've seen in the last few days more and more New Yorkers coming out to vote, and I think some of it may be because also the Board of Elections is putting out those limited edition basketballs, soccer balls, but I'm very, very excited to see more and more New Yorkers casting their vote. Thank you,
All right, I've got time for a few more. We're going to go to Emma and then Morgan.
Hi, Emma.
Mayor. I know it's a big day tomorrow. Specific question, do you agree with the comments of your endorsed candidate, Daria Lisa Avila Chevalier, on opposing deportations regardless of criminal record?
You know, I've been clear that I'm proud of our sanctuary city status. It is a status that we have had in this city for decades. It's also a status that, when there is the conviction of more than 170 serious crimes, does allow for coordination with the federal government on that. However, beyond that, that is something that we have made clear we are not going to allow this city to become the civil immigration enforcement arm of a federal government that is hell-bent on a deportation regime that would rip families apart across this city.
right.
So do you have a comment on the comments that she made in recent interviews?
I've been clear about where I stand on this, and I'm looking forward to making sure that a city where more than 3 million New Yorkers are of an immigrant background, including myself, is one where they understand we're going to follow the laws that we have, and we're proud to do so.
All right, last question. We've got to keep it quick. So, Morgan, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor.
Hi, Morgan.
Just wondering, can you explain why you're choosing not to say who you're endorsing in New York 12 or who you voted for? Is it because you liked all the candidates? And then secondly, how many of the endorsed candidates in the congressional races need to win? I know some experts are saying that at least 2 need to win out of the 3 that you endorsed. What would you say is a good number to really show that you have this political strength?
I'm proud to have endorsed 8 candidates that are running for office, 3 for Congress, 5 in contested races for the state legislature. And I am looking forward to New Yorkers hearing about Claire, Daria Lisa, Brad, when it comes to the state legislator, Abir Kawas, Eli Northrup, Iapa Saira Tupac, Samantha Katan, Brian Romero. These are all candidates that I'm very excited about, and I'm going to spend the next today, tomorrow, doing everything that I can to help them. And then, I've said that when it comes to New York 12, I've had the pleasure of serving alongside 2 of those candidates in Michael Asher and Alex Boris. Nina Schwab recently dropped by Gracie Mansion and left a pamphlet at the gate. But I will be keeping my vote between myself, my ballot, and I actually did keep the pen I used. And if it tells you who I voted for, so be it.
All right, thank you. That's all the time we have.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.